Hello and welcome to some more Moments of Consequence. We have Jake and Casey in the house for a post World Championship interview. Jake, Casey, how are you gentlemen doing tonight?
Doing great.
Doing good.
Excellent, excellent. Well, so you guys made the trip across the pond. You made it back, did all the minis. How much repair work did we have, gentlemen? Jake, I'll start with you. How much repair work? Was there any damage to any of the minis going across the pond and back?
Uh, Strikingly little. I mean, almost none. Like a few shields fell off. Really, like that's it. Like it was actually pretty incredible how well everything held up.
Yeah, I only lost like the like plunger on my cannon crew guy fell off. And then I had one spear that broke off a Glade Rider, and that's it.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm shocked. I try to go transport my stuff to my work and back so I can like paint on my conference period, and I break stuff all the time. So how you guys got to travel all those thousands of miles and did not break as much stuff as I probably would have break, that's incredible. Congratulations,
Yeah, it
gentlemen.
worked out pretty well.
Thanks. Yeah.
So we have a couple of pictures we're going to go through. Not to spoil what we're going to talk about here in just a little bit, but world champions and third place. Jake, Casey, you guys went over to Denmark. You showed out. You won a ton of battles, and I can't wait to preview your entire trip. So just want to on the top, just hey, that's incredible. You're world champs. How does that feel, Jake?
Thanks. I feels great. I mean, I think that just the just the experience of going to Denmark, staying with Balder and spending so much time with him, and just the fun of meeting a bunch of other Warhammer Renaissance players. Like, I mean, does kind of overshadow winning by a lot just because it was such an amazing experience. I think I was going into it kind of with that expectation, and then the fact that I won almost surprised me a little bit. I think I just hadn't, I don't know. I guess I just wasn't as anticipatory about that part of it. So that was sort of like a cherry on top, I guess, of the experience.
Casey, what did you think about the experience, the tournament, just in general, real briefly?
Oh, no, the whole experience was great. I mean, it was like part of a larger trip too, but just like the Denmark Warhammer component was awesome. It was just like quite the cool and special experience to get to hang out with Balder and all the Warhammer Danes, and they were super friendly and welcoming, and yeah, it was just like a ton of fun playing Warhammer in Denmark.
Yeah, and we had prior to going on this trip, we had only ever played with each other, and so it was really kind of cool to just like go from just each other to global and not just global but also to like playing in the room that Warhammer Renaissance was born with with Balder and kind of yeah, like meeting the kind of prominent faces in the Warhammer Renaissance group that we've been seeing online for 3 years, and actually just meeting everyone and having this common ground to enjoy together in a like I had this kind of simultaneous experience of this sort of novelty being overseas, being with people from another country speaking another language, and so there was kind of this foreignness to the experience, but then it also felt just so comfortable. Everyone was so nice, welcoming, and we had this common ground where we all knew and cared about, and were into this, hobby together. And so it felt interesting to feel just so at home, so far away from home.
Yeah, that's incredible. I would love to make the trip one day as well. I think one of the things that makes the trip so cool is um, Balder has such a steep knowledge in some of this old lore and information, and even in our interview, Jake, where he told all those different stories about lores and characters that I've never heard before. He has this. Yeah, I think he's a great steward of the game, and so yeah, I'm very jealous. Very excited that you guys got to go on that, but also very jealous because it seems like it was a fantastic time.
Well, I'll make you even more jealous, and I'll tell you that we got like a much longer version of that the night before with him, with taking out all the old rule books and showing us everything. So,
oh my gosh, yeah, that's crazy. I would love that. That'd be so cool. I was listening like a child. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I want all of this. I would sit here and just listen to him rattle off story after story. But explain to us the pictures that we're seeing here. The one on the left is excellent, and obviously the one on the right, Jake is wearing the Joker's outfit. Jester's cap.
Yeah. So we went. Balder took us to a castle, castle.
Coldinghouse.
Coldinghouse. Thanks, Casey. And we're actually, both pictures are in the castle. The one we're in costumes was from earlier when we were just kind of touring the different rooms in the castle, and there was a costume room, and we were already on the lookout for this photo op with the white dwarves, which is a kind of white dwarf tradition to be reading white dwarfs in some exotic location. So Balder had the idea for us to do it, and then later that evening, first we went to an English pub, which also felt very Warhammer, and then we went to dinner in the dungeon of the castle, and that is the picture on the left. And this is at the end of our meal. We're drinking cognac, and we are back to the White Dwarfs.
What was your favorite? Did you get to sample many different drinks or just one?
Yeah, it was sort of like a multi-course dinner with glasses, wine pairings with each course. So we've had probably 5 glasses of wine at this point, and these are our like nightcaps.
That's amazing.
And so yeah, one of the great things about Denmark is you can take the train home.
That's awesome. Yeah, would very low on DWIs over in the realm of the Danes. So you guys got there on I want to say it was a Saturday, or you were traveling?
It was a Wednesday actually that we got there.
Middle of the week. Okay, yeah. That's right. The championship was on Saturday. You guys were traveling in the middle of the week. You got a chance to, when you first arrived to see Balder, you guys had an opportunity to play a very large 5,000 point battle. And these are some of the pictures of it. So why don't you break down kind of who was on the sides briefly, and who played what faction, and kind of what the general idea of the list or the battle was. And Casey, I'll start with you.
Yeah. So we got there and we were kind of like we were unsure at what point are we going to play Warhammer. And yeah, Balder ended
the answer was immediately.
Yeah, almost immediately. So we played a 5,000 point battle, and Jake had wanted to use the Norse that Balder had because like we don't have that army, and it's like unlikely at any point in the near future that we'll collect it, and it's a pretty unique army. So Jake had made up like a 2,500 point Norse list, and I had a 2,500 point Empire list, and so we faced off against Balder, and he had high elves, and he had a really kind of like a crazy thematic wacky list where he had Teclis, Tyrion, Altharion, but he also had a hero with Forenron's sword that was the general. And he had some massive units, like he had a unit of 60 elves with spears, 6 bolt throwers, a big block of dragon princes, and yeah, it was just quite the army to be facing off against. And I'm trying to figure out in what depth to describe the battle, but basically, I think at some point, Balder was using these like massive, scary characters to kind of terrorize us. But he also ran into some bad luck. He was really good at dispelling spells by rolling 5s and 6s all the time. But then when it came to a couple leadership tests and fleeing, he also rolled 5s and 6s. And so he had a couple huge units, including like a block of dragon princes with Tyrion just flee from the battle. So he got pretty unlucky there. But it was just like a very fun, very wild battle. Jake had quite the task with dealing with Forenrond himself.
So Jake, I had a question for you. So I think one of the things that makes Warhammer Renaissance interesting at like 2,000 points is the ability to like assume a flank and threaten flanks and even possibly get to the rears of some charges, and that's kind of what makes the game dynamic and interesting, and why it's not just shove it up and shove your army forward and like clash at the front ranks. But at 5,000 points on each side, were there flanks to be had? It kind of looks like there might be in some of these pictures, but that's always been something I've been curious about when it comes to really large battles. Does that throw off the balance of? I mean, obviously it might a little bit, but does it throw it off a lot by not being able to maintain flanks as hard?
Well, Baldur's Table is 8 feet long. So so that pretty much I mean, our armies were still, I think, deployed all the way to the edges.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was like a relatively thin line, to have the battle line go all the way across. So yeah, there were definitely still flanks. It felt like.
Very cool. Very cool. Did you have any takeaways from the 5,000 point battle? How did you feel like the Norsca were?
I really liked them. They were kind of an interesting mix of some kind of a lot of like cheaper human infantry through kind of relatively, I don't know, medium, I guess, quality human infantry. Like the Huskarls are, kind of like Reiksguard knights, but instead of having plate armor, they just have light armor, but then they have another weapon skill. And then they have the shield wall ability, and then the Norse have all these cool champion options. You can have a shield maiden that makes them immune to psychology, I think. And then you can have a Ulfhendar, which I took 4 Ulfhendar, and they are they're like sort of the berserkers, where they are frenzied and they shrug off wounds, so they have regen to represent that.
Oh wow.
And so they're like, then their weapon skill 7, strength 5, so they have like 5 strength, 5 attacks, because they have an additional hand weapon and regen. So they're like just totally badass champions. So yeah, and there's a lot of like cool magic weapons in the magic item list. If you look at the Norse list, there's like 1 or 2 magic armors, 2 arcane items, and then like 10 magic weapons. So
oh wow.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool list. I mean, it's and there's some really cheap like thralls, are just sort of like the sort of basic humans, kind of like peasants or something, and so you can get cheap units of archers, and you can take stone trolls, giants, war mammoth. There's Norse dwarves. So it's kind of like a human army that's infantry based and just has some cool bits and bobs in it.
Do they have any cavalry?
They have like light horsemen, which there were no models for, and is not historically accurate, but they do have them. I think Balder was kind of agonized over whether to include them or not because of the lack of historical accuracy.
If you include too many elements of like, no faction can have it all, right? You can't have like great infantry, great monsters, artillery. You can't have it all. So I was just curious because you mentioned a lot of great unit entry profiles.
It's mostly just crazy. Infantry, yeah.
But yeah, they do have infantry.
It's mostly an infantry list.
Yeah, very neat. Well, awesome. So, real quick, talk about the plaque that you guys ended up making, Jake. I think you made that, and I recognize that symbol. I recognize that logo from somewhere.
Yeah, so just had the thought of wanting to kind of, on behalf of the community, just recognize what Balder has done for us by providing us with such a great rule set. And I think I just have a lot of gratitude, and I know I'm not the only one, because it's really made playing Warhammer so possible and fun again. I think like the exact reasons Balder made Warhammer Renaissance and the exact reasons he made it as he did just sort of match exactly what I would want. So it was just this perfect stroke of luck, I guess, that some guy out there in the world just made the perfect edition of Warhammer that I wanted to play. And so I was like, man, that is like made my life better, and I want to like thank him. And I know that I'm not the only one. So my dad's a woodworker, he has sort of like a connection with someone who can do the laser etching. So he did the milling of the wood and got it laser. I did the layout for the text, and that was laser etched into the wood. And then when I got it in that state from my dad, the main problem that I was that it was really low contrast. It's a piece of maple, and the laser etched part like just really didn't stand out much from the wood. And I was planning on painting that evil sun classic orc and goblin design. And I thought, if I paint that, and that's in like high contrast against the wood, it's going to look even more obvious that the lettering is all low contrast. So I was like not really sure what. I decided I probably had to just paint, color it all in basically with paint. And I just wasn't sure how the wood would take the paint. I wasn't sure how long it would take, like how feasible it would be. I got the plaque from my dad just the weekend before we left, so I really had no time for it to not go well. But it went well. That's all scorched, or what's the Rhinox hide paint filling in all the letters. And it took a while, but it was within reason. And then painting that design went quite well. Like I really was able to do that pretty quickly. And yeah, it was actually kind of fun painting it like a slightly larger scale. I basically went with the same design I'd painted on my orc battle standard bear. I slightly moved up the nose and eyes a little higher above the mouth. That was really the only thing I shifted in the way the face was. I probably would have made a new face if I had had more time, but I knew I would save a lot of time by just sticking with what I had already done. And so, yeah, it was like a 1 day, all day sort of project, and I was really happy with how it came out. And so
yeah, that's cool.
yeah,
I echo your statements completely. I think that you have I think you spoke for everybody when just how appreciative we are of how awesome this game is. And yeah, that plaque is amazing. I would, if it were me, if I had something like that would totally go up on the wall. You know what I mean? Like that looks so quality. So you killed it, man. Good work.
Thank you.
All right. So on the left here, we have another picture of the, I believe this is the Norse and Empire battle line, and how mighty that does look. It is thin. I see what you're talking about, Jake, where you have just a thin string of regiments, but that still is mighty impressive that you can go that wide.
There may be a day when the courage of men fails, but it was not that day.
That's great.
The courage of elves may have failed a little bit, though.
They're supposedly known for their high leadership, and it was not meant to be with Thorenrod.
Thorenrod's leadership is highly questionable. That was sort of the theme of the whole battle. I think Tyrion foresaw the way things would go and decided to just sort of exit the battlefield.
That's funny. Casey, so on our right here, we have the battle between you and Jake in round 3 of the championship. I believe I understand it was a Swiss format where you were awarded points at the end of each battle. So you guys played in round 3 of 4, but ended up taking first and third place after the 4th round. But yeah, go ahead and talk a little bit about your guys' battle just briefly.
Well, should we start with talking about our lists?
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
Our games leading up to it. Just
sure.
very
Yeah,
brief summary.
Let's go ahead and take a. That's a great idea. Let's go ahead and take a look at our list. So we're going to talk about the recap of the tournament, and so take it away, Casey. I'll let you start with your Savage Wood Elves, and then even though Jake wants to be first because he's won the championship, I get it. Wants to be first in everything, but Casey, you lead us off with talking about your list a little bit.
Yeah, so even up to like getting there, I was still a little undecided if I was going to play my Empire or the Wood Elves, but I was just feeling much more confident with the Wood Elves. They had been performing better in testing, and it's like I was more excited to play them. So I chose them, and the army I chose was pretty unique in that it was really like based around guerrilla warfare. Like I had no big units, like I really had nothing that could charge any good unit to the front. And so that's like what I kind of knew, that guerrilla warfare was my approach, and I really couldn't fight good regiments, especially to the front. So I had to figure out other ways to win. So for my general, it was actually just a War Dancer hero with the Helm of the Hunt and the Blades of Loic. And he went in this unit of 5 War Dancers with additional hand weapons and a standard bearer with the assault banner that was kind of just a vehicle for him, because he was really quite good. So on the charge, between the assault banner, the Helm of the Hunt, and the Blades of Loic, he had 6 weapon skill 8, strength 6 attacks that rerolled to hit and rerolled to wound. So he was nasty. So he was kind of like my one hard-hitting thing in that unit of War Dancers. And then for my wizard, I had a level 3 gray mage on a unicorn with a Dispel Scroll, which I think is kind of obligatory, the Doomfire Ring, which I think is a great item, and it kind of bolsters the gray lore by having some good magic missiles, which gray doesn't really have. And then the magic war paint to kind of make him survivable if he goes off on his own. And the unicorn was really just a game changer, being able to have this, movement 9 steed with a 4-up natural dispel. That was great. And then occasionally I did like charge things, and the unicorn has like 2 weapon skill 5, strength 6 on the charge attacks. It's like nothing to sneeze at.
Right.
So then for my units, I had 3 Warhawk Riders with a champion with the Hail of Doom Arrow. And so Hail of Doom Arrow is crazy and can just kind of delete a smaller chaff unit on its own. So that was really good. I had Glade Riders, who were also really good. Like having the Vanguard was great. 2 units of 12 archers that I think are just really solid. And I kind of thought of them as, units that could sit back in the middle of the battlefield and just take pot shots all battle, then walk up and potentially claim an objective. Then I had another unit of 5 War Dancers with shields that really their whole point was to get up in the middle of the battlefield and bait a charge from a good unit, and then use the Shadows Coil Dance which makes the combat just end in a draw and no blows are struck. So I could then get a flank charge with some of my other units. So their whole point was to get charged in Shadows Coil. And then I had 5 Sisters of the Thorn with the standard bearer, which I really didn't get a chance to test much with, but very fast unit that had some interesting survivability with the ward save and natural dispel. Hit kind of hard, not that hard, but I just thought it was like an interesting, cool unit, so I wanted to use it.
We talked a lot off camera about how your Sisters of the Thorn have great rules. Did any of those resists and ward saves, did any of those really kind of come into play, or was it just kind of like, oh yeah, none of these special rules really mattered, and they were just kind of a light cav?
No, they mattered a lot. I mean, I think it was really significant that, I mean, all my units except the Glade Riders, Archers, and Warhawk Riders, so like half my units or more, had natural dispels. So, and those were like generally the better units. Um, so I think that was really good because it kind of made them not a great target for spells, not a great target for like bolt throwers because they had a ward save. They were like pretty soft to just like rink-a-dink shooting from archers and stuff. I think that's like their weak point, and they don't really hit that hard. And I ended up kind of feeling like they were like the one thing in my army I would probably change to something else.
Oh wow.
Partly because I think they just need like a champion or a hero or something in them to be hard enough hitting to really be useful. But they were still pretty good. But that's the one thing kind of after all this that I would change for a 1,600 point battle about this army.
Wow. None of our people in our meta up here at in Missouri, none of us have anything with wood elves, and the only other elf we have is high elf. So wood elves play so drastically different. Like I didn't even know the war dancers were objective secured, basically, where they could like be a scoring unit. I had no idea because they were a skirmish unit, and that kind of breaks one of Baldur's like core rules. But it's really cool. Great list. I love the balance. It would make me super, super nervous not to have some type of block playing the factions that I'm used to. But it's awesome that you found a way to, like you said, manufacture wins by not facing things up from their front. But
yeah, just like kind of, I just planned, I was like, this battle, all my games are not going to be about fair fights. That's just not going to work. And I have a lot of maneuverability, and the gray lore is great for movement spells, both the Bridge of Shadows, and then there's like the I think it's the gray wings, the gray wings that you can move a single model. So like you can move my treeman all over the battlefield. Oh yeah, that's the other thing I had as a treeman.
yeah.
So does it make sense for me to just go through my first two rounds, and then we can talk about Jake, the battle with Jake, and then he can do kind of his
whatever
run.
you guys would like to do. That sounds great. Yeah.
So yeah, round one, I played against Anders. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it the Danish way. But he was playing vampire counts. And he had like a block of whites, block of skeletons, block of zombies, and then a cavalry unit with, I think, a BSB in his general. And what ended up happening, kind of defining the battle, was that he just moved the cavalry unit up really quickly right in front of my face, and which I really didn't have anything that could fight it to the front again. But I think I was able to get off a movement spell on my treeman, and I ended up like triple charging it, treeman and the Sisters of the Thorn in the flank, and then a unit of war dancers, I think, in the other flank or something. And it took a few rounds of combat, but I ended up killing his general, and that was kind of the battle.
Oh wow.
There's more to it than that, but that was like basically what defined that battle.
Right. What were the objectives that you played with?
That one, I forget the objective, but yeah, I don't remember what it was. I ended up getting, I think, a 8-1 victory.
Okay, cool.
I think.
Nice. So you beat vampire counts. Was he any flavor of vampire counts?
It was the blood dragon. So I think they were
very cool.
My memory is so bad, but I think they were like they might have been the blood dragon knights. Actually, I don't think they were. I think they were something.
They could be von Karstein. That was just like a regular knight unit still, which is still very strong because all vampires are strong. But
I honestly just can't remember. But yeah, no, he was a good opponent. I think it was just like that unit came up, got a little too adventurous, and I think I got off a movement spell, my treeman, and that kind of made it way too adventurous, and I was able to win from there.
Nice.
And then round two was against Rune, who plays orcs and goblins, and I'd actually lost to him in a bigger, more like casual battle the day before. So I was worried when I got paired against him. And so he had orcs and goblins with like these, didn't have many goblins. It was like these big blocks of orcs. And a hero on a wyvern. And it was really not what I wanted to see because it meant my shooting was terrible and all my like fiddly units like couldn't really do that much against his blocks. So the battle was really close the entire time. A lot of the time I felt a little bit on the back foot. And it ended up, it was take the bridge. So we both had units on the bridge and I wasn't going to charge him and he couldn't really like turn around to charge me based on how his unit was set up. And so in the last possible turn, I got off Bridge of Shadows on his big unit that was on the bridge and flung them somewhere else. And so I was able to score the objective. And I think the points of our armies that we had killed otherwise was like very even. So otherwise it definitely would have been a draw. It was a very, very close game.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of just got lucky to get that spell off at the very last moment.
So thematic for Take the Bridge.
Yeah.
They took the wrong bridge.
Exactly.
The Bridge of Shadow led them to nowhere. That's pretty dope. Awesome.
Yeah.
So that sets up the stage for you are 2-0, about to head into round 3, and you get paired with Jake.
And Jake, we were kind of eyeing each other. He was also 2-0, and then we got paired, which kind of was lame because we went all the way to Denmark and ended up playing each other. But also was pretty epic to just be like playing, the battle that we, had played just a week before at home, but suddenly we were in Denmark in the World Championship having the battle. So it was pretty cool. And Balder brought over this amazing porter, I think it was a Danish porter that we had for the battle. And so it was a good time. I'll say like my side of the battle, which like my description, you can kind of.
Should I do my list and?
Yeah.
Maybe do that first.
Yeah, do your list, your 2 battles, and then that sets the stage for round 3. So take it away, Jake.
Okay, so yeah, I ended up being really happy with my list. I think it went through like 4 iterations, and obviously all tested against Casey. And I think the first time we played, it went terribly wrong. Casey was playing Wood Elves, and he was just like dancing around my army, making fools of all the greenskins. And anyway, I ended up honing it to something I was really happy with. The Black Orc War Boss was definitely my MVP. His leadership 10 was just crucial. He certainly, I like that the adamant armor and broadsword of ensorcelled iron are definitely a setup I like. Not too expensive, but they make him, he becomes toughness 6 with a strength 7 attack with +1 to hit. I mean, that's pretty solid. He certainly got in some combats with, I think he killed a demon prince, who did have a few wounds on him, to be fair, already. But mostly for his leadership and his quelling of animosity, I think he was really good. The Horn of Urgok, I really like that in this list because there's a lot that can flee, and it's nice to have a way to rally it, and it never hurts to throw a few fear panic checks on the enemy. Actually, the Horn, though, didn't come in so prominently. I think probably partly because my battles were often going well, and then a lot of times when goblins fled, they kind of got off the table quickly, or I don't know, it just didn't seem, there definitely weren't any moments where it was like this crucial game changing moment of consequence. But still glad I had it for sure.
Right.
And then I have the Shaman Lord, pretty much loaded up with kind of favorite items. The Doomfire Ring, Dispel Magic Scroll are both kind of almost like must takes. Warrior Familiar for some protection, because I actually had him in the unit of Biggins with the Black Orc War Boss, which was another kind of idea that I guess is relative, I don't know, I came up with in the last couple of months, because one of the big things you don't want to happen to your shaman, especially if it's a high level, is have a failed animosity check. and then miss out on the magic phase. And so, you have a Black Orc preventing that. So,
Right.
And with the Warrior Familiar, he's got a kind of layer of protection there. And then the Crimson Amulet is, of course, so that even if he fails his WOG check, he is not at risk for his head to blow up. So, and that sort of makes taking a level 4 feasible. Otherwise,
Right.
I think it's just too risky. So, yeah, really liked him. With that setup, he did die one battle, got eaten by a Cold One Chariot. I guess I'll go over that soon. But yeah, he was good. And then I like the 2 cheap chariots and 2 cheap artillery pieces. They all certainly contributed to the effort, all for around 50 points each. The Biggins, just kind of my central unit. I think I probably, yeah, just kind of a solid centerpiece for the army. The Savage Orcs with great weapons were kind of my unit that I could, with Hand of Gork kind of throw at the enemy for maximum effect. They were sort of the most like heavy hitting unit, I guess, but they also were cheap enough that it was okay if they were at put at risk. The 12 Black Orcs I like because they can really kind of be outside the range of the general, and you need some stuff that can be outside the range of the general because it's not all going to fit within that 12-inch bubble. And so with not having animosity, with having leadership 8, and then with extra hand weapons, they're the perfect unit to be in buildings because of all of those things. So they were kind of my be out on the flank or be a great unit to go in a building. Clubbers and Netters were kind of a late addition to the army. They, I think, fit in really well as just if they're at full strength, they're actually pretty nasty. Like 12 always strike first, strength 5 attacks in the first round of combat. Like nothing really wants to take that. And they were also a nice option for Hand of Gork as just a unit that could be thrown into a good position, and they weren't obviously expensive, so you could kind of it wasn't too much to roll the dice on a risky placement. I often deployed them almost as sort of more like behind stuff because there wasn't room, and they were just a nice unit to kind of be coming in the late game or kind of get thrown into the mix with Hand of Gork.
That's really cool. No, that's really cool.
Yeah, they worked out really well. And then the 2 units of 12 Forest Goblin Archers were kind of favorites. They're the most recent thing I've painted, and they've just proven to be awesome with their strength 4 arrows. And I don't know, I think it might be the new paint jobs or something, because they just seem to overperform constantly. And then yeah, the Wolf Riders, just fast unit that usually runs away off the table because they're so fast.
I love how cheap all your stuff is. I mean, I'm just looking at 12 Black Orcs with extra hand weapons for 121 points, 12 Forest Goblins for 54 points. Like those 2 numbers just jump out so hard. It's like, dang, that is a lot of quality for not that many points, but you pay for it, man. Animosity is a beast, and the magic test that you have to take as well are brutal. Like, it's just tough, man. So anyway, so you had 2 rounds. So tell us about your 2 rounds.
So first round was against Thomas, who had a really lovely, well-painted Khorne Demons army.
Oh wow!
So it was like, I think if I'm remembering right, it was a Demon Prince general with wings, and a Demon Prince battle standard bearer who had like was like the small size.
Yep.
Which was a very cool model conversion. And then he had 2 substantial units of Bloodletters and then 1 small unit of Bloodletters, and I think 2 units of Fleshhounds, if I'm remembering right. and we had a sort of a variant of Take the Tower. It was like a mansion instead of a tower. I kind of got lucky because I got to choose sides, and the mansion was closer to one side, so I took that side. And then I also rolled first turn, so I was able to get Black Orcs in the mansion on turn one. And then I think, just to really generally summarize, I mean, he never got to even attack. Well, I guess at the very end, he attacked the building with like a handful of flesh hounds, but I think the battle was kind of characterized by, maybe, I guess I would say me just kind of having somewhat of an edge with, a little bit of shooting with Hand of Gorks, some more maneuverability. I ended up getting the Savage Orcs in the rear of his biggest unit of Bloodletters with the BSB. And I'm trying to remember what happened. I know eventually I prevailed. I think maybe my big unit of Biggins actually got into that combat eventually. I'm not remembering too well, but yeah, I ended up winning that one. And then the
Real
next
quick,
yeah.
with corn is tricky because I play corn too. It's tricky because if you don't have like serious anti-magic shutdown, corn hates magic. Doesn't mean that they're good against it and they're very defensive against it. Like they could still get absolutely train wrecked by magic if you don't have a serious plan. To shut
and I think that was something that gave. I mean, the Doomfire Ring was killing Bloodletters. The Hand of Gork obviously gave me that crucial rear charge. So I think another Doomfire Ring shot put a bunch of wounds on the big Demon Prince, and my Black Orc finished him off. Warboss finished him off later in the game. So yeah, I mean I think I just had, with the magic and with the deployment situation, just kind of got had a good army. I think it was just a good matchup, and then the deployment also helped me. So next battle was against Tor. He had Dark Elves, which I have not played in Warhammer Renaissance before. We had a take the center, but it was sort of designed so that there was kind of like ruins, kind of like creating almost like a big ruined building. So the center was somewhat like half cordoned off, which made for kind of quite a cool battlefield. So you had to almost kind of enter like a half ruined like arena, which was an interesting challenge for my army because it's it's so many units and such wide frontage and so on. It was kind of a pretty back and forth battle, kind of both sort of trying to get into that middle area and it being kind of awkward movement wise often, and one lucky, so my good luck in this battle, maybe I just won this all because of luck, but he had the special character assassin Malleus Darkblade, I think is the name.
So Shadowblade is the Shadowblade's
Shadowblade. Yeah, so he when he attempted to unveil Shadowblade, he rolled a 1. So Shadowblade had been discovered and killed. No. And my theory is that he just wasn't smelly enough to blend in with my orcs and goblins, and they could just tell that something wasn't right.
Oh no! Yeah, that's
so that was certainly favorable. And yeah, I just sort of remember the battle being pretty close, throughout. I did sort of make a mistake where there was a Cold One chariot kind of in the flank of my Biggins, and I wasn't that concerned about it. I think I had Hand of Mork Wansia on it, and I thought even if it does escape and charge me in the flank, not such a big deal. My Black Orc Warboss can move over and smash it. And what ended up happening is it charged. It actually did kill my Shaman. I don't remember why the Warrior Familiar was gone, but he was for some reason. And then my Black Orc War Boss put 3 wounds on it, so he didn't kill it in 1 turn, and then I did lose that combat if I'm remembering correctly, but passed the break test, so the battle would have been over if I hadn't passed that. So I did hold, and then of course killed it the next turn, and I think, you know, he had a couple medium-sized, you know, elite units that were entering the center, but I think they were just a little too small, and I was able to whittle them down and take them out and won the objective because I just had a bunch of units. And yeah, that was a victory too. So after that round, Casey and I were the only 2 that had won both battles, and we were matched up against each other.
Excellent. So then that leads us to round 3, and round 3 was against you guys. Real quick, who won? Who won the fight at the top?
Jake won the fight.
And what was the point? Like, how many points did you get for it, Jake? What was the discrepancy? Like, did you get like 4?
Oh, I don't remember.
Oh, I got you. Cool. So Jake ends up winning. Casey, I'll let you go first with your perspective on the battle. It was actually a rematch of the battle report that we had just put up earlier this week on Monday.
We had just played this battle, and it was Take the Hill. It was the same thing. So it was kind of funny, and I had kind of, if you see that battle report, I had gotten very lucky to kind of snag it right at the end. Otherwise, if I didn't get lucky, I was screwed. So in this one, you know, we both knew exactly what each other were up to, no secrets, and we just had to figure out how to get the better of the other person. So the way, from my perspective, kind of the flow of the battle was that I did my guerrilla warfare wood elf thing and like took out basically all of Jake's like chaff units. And by, I don't know if it was like turn 3 or 4, like you really just had your big block of big uns with your general and mage. Some of the savage orcs, though, I did shoot them down quite a bit. You had a boar chariot still left, which I think I ended up getting eventually, and then you had the clubbers and netters that were like at half strength but still around. But I had kind of like killed everything without taking too many losses, so I felt like pretty ahead. But the issue was I didn't have anything to do. I just couldn't do anything about that unit, the big block of biggins with the general and mage, and so Jake just plopped that unit on the hill and you use some movement spells to kind of get the savage orcs up there or something. But he just kind of sat up there on the hill, and I really I made some desperate attempts to try and like flank charge with my archers and stuff like that, but nothing worked. And Jake ended up getting the objective, and I kind of had to be desperate to try and get him off the objective, so I lost a bunch of troops in the process. And yeah, Jake was victorious. I don't remember the points, but yeah, it was a pretty solid victory. That was my perspective on the battle. Jake, what was your rundown?
I think early on it felt very like tit for tat, where, you know, we were like, I remember early on you shot up my black orcs and they failed a panic check and they ran through my through both artillery pieces. They had kind of been put in front of the artillery to defend them against some kind of, you know, vanguard based charge or something, but they ended up getting shot up and fled, and then both my bolt thrower crew and doom diver crew fled off. I'm pretty sure I took out your glade riders early with doomfire ring.
Yeah.
So stuff was, you know, it was very like blow for blow. You had a little bit of a scare when I charged your mage with wolf riders, but you really couldn't flee. And then, of course, the wolf riders just failed and ran away. So you were okay.
Yeah.
So I think one of the defining features of the battle from my perspective was that we both had movement spells. You had Grey Wings and Bridge of Shadows, and I had Hand of Gork. And our battle took a really long time because of that, because every movement phase and every magic phase, we both had all the stuff to consider about not only where were we moving, but also what might happen to the magic phase movement wise from your army and from my army in terms of, you know, you could Grey Wings your treeman around, which you did many times. And then you still had Bridge of Shadows as well, and I had Hand of Gork. So it was just, I think it was a very dynamic battle in that way. Like your treatment was all over the place. And I kind of had to decide that if it was your magic phase, I was just not wasting dispels or anything on that because I could still respond to my movement phase, which I think was wise in retrospect. Yeah, I think in the end, like you said, it was just because I'm trying to remember what happened. I think you did charge my biggins with your war dancers, and my Black Orc war boss killed your general, right?
Yeah, I had to kind of make
that's
some desperate maneuvers because
that was the most desperate.
There's that, and then the archers in the rear, which just didn't really do anything. Yeah,
I don't remember that part. Yeah, but yeah, so I guess my Black Orc killed a War Dancer hero and a Demon Prince.
Wow, an accomplished weekend for that guy.
Yeah.
That war boss earned his beer at the end of that weekend.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna go hot take here. I think Gray Magic is the best lore in the game because I still think teleport spells are the strongest thing. One of the strongest things you can do in the Magic phase. Doesn't really get messed with natural dispels. Almost always is a candidate for a dispel scroll, especially early. It's very, very taxing on other people's magic defense because you can have multiple different teleport spells. So even if you shut one of them down, there's probably another one coming where it teleports either a unit or like a big piece, like a monstrous creature, like a treeman. So yeah, I think that is interesting that both of you placed very, very highly while also having Gray Magic, like basically some form of a teleport spell at your disposal.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like Gray Magic is really good, and I think an underrated spell is the Dance of Despair. That spell is nuts.
Amazing.
But the weakness of Gray Magic though is there's not really like any magic missiles, other than some really close range weird stuff. So that's why I felt like I really needed the Doomfire Ring to supplement that. That is like the downside of Gray Magic. It didn't matter so much for the Wood Elves, but armies that have less shooting can be reliant on magic to have magic missiles, and Gray doesn't have that. So that's like, I think the weakness of it as a lore.
All right, so that kind of sets us up for round 4. So Jake comes away victorious in round 3. Casey, why don't you go ahead and go first and explain to us who you played round 4, how your match went, and what happened. Go ahead.
So yeah, after a friendly but bitter defeat to Jake, went into round 4, played against Tor with his Dark Elves. And I hadn't played against Dark Elves in Warhammer Renaissance yet, so I wasn't totally sure what to expect, but I knew based on seeing it happen before that there was an assassin lurking. So I forget what the objective was. I think it was raid enemy camp, if I'm remembering correctly. But turn 2, Tor revealed the assassin. I did not get so lucky. He appeared right next to my mage, charged my mage, so I had to flee. And then I charged with my War Dancer hero in that unit. And I ended up killing the assassin, but he has the Heart of Woe. And so he killed my general and a couple War Dancers. And then my mage was in this terrible position in the middle of the battlefield fleeing, rallied, and then got charged by a Cold One Chariot and had to flee again. So really, like, until like turn 4 or something, my mage just did nothing that battle. The good thing was, though, my shooting was really effective against the Dark Elves. Like, I had a longer range, and my shooting was great against toughness 3 with like light armor kind of troops that were expensive. So really was able to reduce a lot of Tor's units to like either completely kill them or like make them kind of much less effective. We both had Vanguard troops in the beginning of the battle, which was kind of interesting. And so our Vanguard troops like fought it out, and my Glade Riders emerged victorious, then ended up dying to something else. Like they fled from shooting or something. But what ended up happening was he really had this unit of Corsairs in the middle of the battlefield with his mage and a BSB. It was a pretty tough nut to crack. They were unbreakable from a banner. And so I had my Sisters of the Thorn in the flank of that unit like the whole game, and we are just kind of grinding each other down. And they ended up killing the Sisters of the Thorn. But then once the Sisters of the Thorn were gone, I was able to unload a lot of shooting and magic into that unit. And it was like kind of the bloodiest battle that I had. He was getting off Blade Wind constantly and like just destroying my troops. So it ended up where the only models he had left at the end was like a BSB with 1 wound, and I think his mage with 1 wound or a hero with 1 wound. Kind of forget. He had like those 2 guys and the Cold One Chariot, which had like 2 wounds left. And then I barely had anything left. My only scoring unit left on the table was 5 archers that had fled and rallied, but they rallied just inside my deployment zone. I think so it was take the field was the objective. And so like no one was taking the field because he didn't have any troops to, and my only unit that could was like inside my deployment zone. I barely had anything besides that. I had like my mage, a couple war dancers, a couple other archers, and maybe that's about it. So it was a bloody battle. I ended up winning. I think it was a 6-3 victory, maybe. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was like a total bloodbath of a battle, but it was a good time. It was a good time trying to kind of like face an unknown foe, the Dark Elves. But yeah, so that was my round 4.
And you came away victorious.
Came away victorious, and yeah, ended up getting 3rd place. Jake, how was your round 4?
I have a question for you first. Did your mage survive every battle?
I think so. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So my round 4 was against Johannes, famous podcaster from the Flail of Skulls podcast, which I started listening to, I think at least 2 years ago. I really enjoy I've never actually played the Flail of Skulls rule set, but I've so much enjoyed listening to him and his co-hosts break down 5th edition, and because it's kind of fun as a I played 5th edition as basically a kid who had no real strategy insight, so it's fun to listen to them kind of go back and sort of pick apart like 5th edition strategy. So yeah, it was kind of a nice surprise to hear that he was coming to the tournament. Yeah, we just had such a lovely battle. I think I kind of at that point was like, yeah, it looks like I'm probably going to win the tournament. So I kind of had this, I don't know, I was very kind of relaxed, and I guess there'd been a few beers drank at that point too, probably. And I think there's just this, yeah, I think what made the battle so fun is that, I think I sort of think of Warhammer in general as an aspirational game. Like it's rare that you sort of play Warhammer as it truly should be played, with painted armies, with terrain, with, knowing all the rules, all those sort of things that are hard to achieve. And then I think one of the, I guess I'll call it like a psychological aspiration, is to play where you're playing with all the strategy you can, but that you're almost like, in almost kind of like a Buddhist way, not attached to the outcome, where you're enjoying the spectacle of the battle unfolding. And this battle really felt like that. It felt like me and, Johannes and I were like playing to win, and certainly I think playing well, but also it felt like he and I were just really just enjoying like seeing the battle unfold together in this like fun way. And yeah, so we had Take the Village, he had Empire. I think when I saw his army, he hasn't played a lot of Warhammer Renaissance, and when I saw his army, I felt pretty confident that I had the tools to win the battle. He didn't really have a lot of units that looked too great for taking the buildings. He had like 2 units of state troops, maybe a detachment of crossbows, kind of an interesting unit of pistoliers with like a lord with a dragon bow, and a a wizard in that unit. So I think the point was to have a mobile wizard and then the general to kind of protect the wizard. And then maybe another big unit of crossbows with a rending banner. And then he had 2 normal cannons, which he said he wishes, he had taken great cannons. So the normal cannons weren't really that adequate for shooting the buildings. I think that was most of his arm. Oh, we had some Kislev horse archers. There might be a unit I'm forgetting, but I think that's most of it. So yeah, I kind of had the sense of, I've got much better units for taking buildings. I was shooting my Doom Diver at the building that was like kind of nearer to him. And I think some of my shooting and magic was able to kind of tear up some of his units pretty well. And then including his generals and wizards unit. And then later on in the game, I basically was just getting hands of Gorkov and kind of cleaning up his state troops. And by the end, I had the 2 buildings that were closer to me. I had my biggins in one, my black orcs in the other, and then I just had other like my savage orcs, and then like the goblin, various goblin units kind of fighting it out with the state troops. And I think in the end I had all 3 buildings claimed. So yeah, it certainly went my way, but it was just a really fun battle that I just really enjoyed, and really enjoyed meeting Johannes. So
and that
thanks,
was
Johannes.
that was the game that is pictured here, and you got the dub. That's awesome. That's so cool. So I had a question for both of you real quick, and then we'll wrap it up and get out of here. But I think that if you were to do a tournament of Warhammer Renaissance, and that's kind of a thought that's been percolating in my brain about doing stateside at some point, whether we have to meet up somewhere near the East Coast or near the Midwest, or a centralized location. But that's something that's on my bucket list of Warhammer Renaissance things to do. I think 1,600 points and doing it Swiss style, like the way that you guys did it, I think that's the right way to do it. What if there was anything you could change, add? I mean, I heard you guys say a little bit like Casey, I think you mentioned it, where you said I knew from basically just being in the room that Shadowblade was a thing and existed. I've always kind of wondered if you could have like a sidebar to like, I'm going to play this list and I have like this, 200, 400 points that I can swap out, not knowing who I'm playing next round, but just to like keep people on their toes. That would be my only thing, to keep maybe just the competitiveness as crisp as possible. But I think, Jake, you put it great, where it's really a game of, it doesn't have to be a game of perfect competitiveness, nor should it be, but like it's an aspirational game. So were there anything you guys would add? Casey, I'll ask you first.
I don't think so. And I think the way that Balder like facilitated it off air, I think we talked about this, but not on air, where the first 2 rounds he had set up all all the tables with like assigned objectives and made sure that people didn't play on the same table twice. And then after 2 rounds, he redid the tables. I thought that was like a really good way to do it. And it really streamlined it because like setup can take a long time and all that. So it was all like pre-set up. No, I don't think I would really change anything with the way that it was run. I thought it was great. And it was also just like a great environment. Like Balder was kind of choreographing the whole thing, and he made some delicious food, and like showed up at our game with this amazing porter at one point. And yeah, he was just like an awesome like host of the tournament. He wasn't playing in it, which was kind of interesting, but he like wanted to facilitate it and did like a really awesome job facilitating like a very like fun, competitive, but like relaxed and pleasant tournament experience. So yeah, no, I don't think I would change anything. I think Warhammer's like not ideal for tournaments. So but I think it's just like compared to some other games, but I think the way that it was done was like a very, very good way to do it.
Jake, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it was to me, it was like a perfect day. So I'd say it's pretty hard to like say there'd be, it just was great. Yeah. And the sort of like special beer being, poured for us at the start of round 3 was certainly a nice touch. It was this Danish porter that was, I think, the best porter I've ever had in my life. So
yeah, I would agree.
So yeah, it was perfect.
That's awesome, fellas. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about it. I so looked forward each day to the posts and the text messages, and it's always good. I'm going to say there's been 2 world championships, if I'm correct. I think this is the second one, and the United States is currently the proud holder of one of the 2 championships. So could not be cooler to watch you guys do it. And hopefully I'll get a chance to come follow you guys and do it next time. But yeah, thanks, fellas.